Is the rule-based global order ending, or is it simply changing in line with emerging global power politics that are multipolar in nature? From wars that ignore international law to weaponized trade rules and global institutions that are struggling to maintain global order, one can easily wonder, is the world abandoning rule-based order as we knew it and adopting raw form power politics? Rule-based order entails state interactions in global politics that is characterized by agreed laws, norms, and interactions on various diplomatic platforms founded by the states themselves. These include global institutions such as the UN and various international organizations that exist in global politics. These international organizations are given various mandates in ensuring that the global politics runs in accordance with agreed norms and rules. In this regard, states are restricted in expressing power politics in its raw form. And therefore, in the rule-based global order, states respect and obey international law. They uphold the equality of states and they honor the treaties that they have signed. And they protect human rights and also cooperate through various forms and various diplomatic channels that these states have agreed to use in as far as the global politics is concerned. And these multilateral forums mean that state actions are regulated to a point that states are naturally motivated to live in line with the agreed rules and norms. And scholars that uphold the realist way of thinking agree that the international global politics is anarchical in nature. It is anarchical in nature because there is no central authority that regulates state activities. In this environment that is by and large described as a state of nature, states can have a leeway in pursuing their national interest the way they want. And this leeway means that states are going to collide in global politics as they pursue incompatible goals. And this pursuit of incompatible goals leaves the globe in conflict, wars that are costly, and unending rivalry. And therefore, in taming these negative effects of the state of nature, there was a need to establish global rules that regulate the conduct of states so that states are able to live in harmony with one another. One such attempt was in the signing of the Treaty of Westphalia, in which the states agreed to live up to the concept of sovereignty and observe the equality of states. However, some of these ideals have been greatly challenged in as far as their implementation is concerned. And this has prompted chaos and wars on a world scale. In the run-up to the World War I in 1914 and the aftermath of the war in 1918, global leaders converged in Versailles in an attempt to search for elusive peace. In this regard, it was generally agreed that for us to maintain global peace and security, there is need for states to cooperate. And Woodrow Wilson, at that point the President of America, in his 14th point, pushed for the creation of an international organization that could be in charge of world peace and security. And in line with that, the League of Nations was founded. The work of the League was to make sure that state activities and state interactions uphold peace and global security. And this early attempt cements the urge of the world leaders in establishing global order. In the run-up to the Second World War, the League of Nations, of course, collapsed owing to several reasons. And after the end of the Second World War, again there was an attempt to search for this elusive peace. And it was agreed that the way forward is forming an international organization that can regulate state activities and uphold peace and global security. On that thinking, the United Nations was founded in 1945. This global institution was charged with the responsibility of enhancing collective security. And because its mandate was so wide, the UN created other agencies to assist in the execution of other supporting mandates to global order and security. One such kind of an agency was the agencies that were leaning towards economic development, because after World War II, the world was left in tatters. And therefore, it was a requirement that it is built. And this can only take place through those platforms that encouraged economic cooperation. And they also solved economic challenges faced the states. And other institutions that rose up are those ones that uphold human rights and many others. And in that kind of regard, the world appears gravitating towards rule-based global order, because within the UN Charter, the Charter spelled out various rules that member states were supposed to live up. For instance, a peaceful resolution of conflicts and prohibition on the use of power. Those were some of the defining principles in as far as the UN Charter was concerned. And also the creation of the International Court of Justice that was supposed to be in charge of ironing out differences among states. In the end of Cold War and the fall of the Berlin Wall, the world became increasingly unipolar, and the objectives of global politics shifted from great power rivalries to the quest for democracy, and this expanded the human rights platforms, and it pushed for globalization. And therefore, the world became increasingly interconnected. And in this interconnectedness, it is very important that the rules are at the center of these interactions. And therefore, in this line, the world embraced the rule-based global order. However, in the recent past, the world has witnessed events that threaten the long-established rule-based global order. There is an increase in wars that totally ignore international law. Wars that seriously ignore the international humanitarian law, including the sacred principles for the protection of the civilian population. We have seen in the recent past state actions that are operating outside the agreed laws and norms. And this prompts one to probe the question whether the world is abandoning the rule-based order and embracing raw power politics. This is because in the recent past, there has been erosion of multilateral institutions. We have seen global powers, major powers, leaving global institutions at an alarming rate. One such example is the United States of America's latest move of leaving more than 66 UN specialized agencies. And this means that the multilateral institutions are slowly being rendered ineffective. There is also rise of unilateral power politics. States have taken it upon themselves to pursue their national interest in total disregard with the existing rules and norms. The United Nations Charter prohibits the use of force. But in the recent time, we have seen states that are using force to push for their national interest. This can be seen in Israel's activities in Gaza, as well as the Russian Federation activities in the Ukraine. And this presents situations where states are acting unilaterally. And in the recent past also, there has been an increase in states that are threatening to use power to get their way. The United States has been threatening to use military force to take the Greenland. China is setting its eyes on Taiwan, and seems like every state is almost on the verge of taking unilateral decisions in line with its national interest, which means that the rule-based global order is increasingly threatened by such unilateral decisions and actions. Also, the major powers are also breaking global norms as we know them. These global norms are prohibition in the use of force, observance of human rights, protection of civilian population in conflict-prone areas. Some of these norms that have been a defining pillar in a rule-based order are increasingly being ignored in the recent time, which means that the norms can no longer be enforced and they are being broken left, right, and center. And the ones that are existing are being questioned to a point where their credibility is put into a test. And as a result of that, they have been weakened and they have been unattainable in the recent past. Also, public declarations by leaders of the major powers are threatening the global order that is based on the rules. Threats that surround the use of military force are not beneficial to rule-based global order. But in the recent past, this has been on an increasing trend, which puts into a sharp focus the various rules that we have that regulate global politics. And because of that declaration, it is creating a spirit of agitation from other major powers to also set themselves up to defend themselves or to attack if they are attacked also. And this can be well explained by the recent US declarations on the Greenland and the subsequent desire to use force to take the Greenland, which is an autonomous territory of Denmark. This has prompted the European Union to release some of the soldiers to the Greenland. So that kind of a standoff that is necessitated by the Declaration of World Leaders puts the global order that is based on the rules in a very serious strain. In line with this, is therefore logical to conclude that the rule-based global order as we know it is ending. I think we are not near that. We are still in the rule-based global order. The fact is that this global order is changing in line with the divergent needs of the states in the modern time. It is also changing in line with the emerging multipolar power politics, because the world is moving from unipolar politics immediately after the end of Cold War to now multipolar politics, where we have several emerging centers of power. And because of that, not all states want the same thing. And therefore, it is normal for us to witness that kind of a constant confrontation, but still the rules do exist. And therefore, because we have this rule-based order being seriously challenged, it doesn't mean that it is simply ending or the world is simply abandoning it. Global institutions still exist in as much as they are not perfect in upholding the global order, but they are still existing and they are still regulating great power politics. The United Nations is still existing. The states are still using the International Court of Justice to pursue their claims and tackle conflicts among states, and other global agencies are still existing, and many other treaties are also in practice. And therefore, to the large extent, this shift is not just indicating that the global order as we know it is disappearing. It's just indicating that the global order as we know it is changing, probably to accommodate emerging global politics that are multipolar in nature, and therefore it is more about rebalancing towards new patterns of cooperation. And though imperfectly applied, the idea of rule-based order has not vanished in its entirety from global politics.